Chapter 13. The Quality of Being Resonant. If Grison had anyone to thank, or blame, for becoming the Toll, it was Great Mendoza. He had been key in shaping Grison's new image. Yes, it had been Grison's idea to go public and let the world know he still had a connection to the Thunderhead, but it was Mendoza who finessed the reveal. The man was a skilled strategist. Before soaring on eternal life and becoming a Tony's great, he had worked in marketing for a soft drink company. "I came up with the blue polar beer for Antarctic cold soda," he had once told Grison. "There weren't even polar beers in Antarctica, much less blue ones, so we engineered some. Now you can't even think of Antarctica without thinking of their blue beers, can you?" There were many who thought that the Thunderhead was dead, that what the Tonys called the Great Resonance was the sound of it dying. Mendoza, however, offered an alternate explanation to the Tonists. "The Thunderhead has been visited by the resonant spirit," he posited. "The living tone has breathed life into what had once been artificial thought." It made sense if you looked at it through the lens of Tony's beliefs. The Thunderhead, all cold, hard science, had been transformed into something greater by the living tone. And, as such things often fell into groups of three, there needed to be a human element to complete the triad. And there he was, Grison Tolliver, the one human being who spoke to the living thunder. Mendoza began by dropping rumors in key trigger points about the existence of a mystical figure who conversed with the Thunderhead. Tony's prophet, who was the link between the spiritual and the scientific. Grison was dubious, but Mendoza was passionate and persuasive. "Imagine it, Grison. The Thunderhead will speak through you, and in time, the wall will hang on your every word. Isn't that what the Thunderhead wants? For you to be its voice in the world?" "I don't exactly have a voice of thunder," Grison pointed out. "You can whisper, and people will still hear thunder," Mendoza told him. "Trust me." Then Mendoza set out to create a more organized hierarchy to the Tony's calling that might bring together the various divergent factions, which was easier with an individual to rally around. Mendoza, who had for many years led a quiet and examined life as the head of the monastery in Wichita, was now back in his element as a master of public relations and branding. The Toll was his new product, and there was nothing more exciting to him than the thrill of the sale, especially when it was a one-of-a-kind item in a global market. "All you need now is a title," Mendoza had told Grison. "One that fits with Tony's beliefs, or at least can be made to fit." It was Grison who came up with the Toll, and as it was actually part of his last name, it almost felt preordained. He was rather proud of himself, until people actually started calling him that. And to make it worse, Mendoza invented a pompous honorific, referring to him as "your sonority." Grison actually had to ask the Thunderhead what it meant. "From the Latin sonoritas, meaning the quality of being resonant," it told him. "It has a certain ring," which made Grison groan. People took to it, and before long everything was, "Yes, your sonority." "No, your sonority." "How might I please you today, your sonority?" It all felt so strange. After all, he was no different than he had been. And yet here he was posing as some sort of divine sage. Next, Mendoza arranged the dramatic spot for his audiences. Only one supplicant at a time, because it kept him from being overexposed, and limiting access nurtured the growing mystic. Grison tried to draw the line at the formal ceremonial clothing that Mendoza had commissioned from some famous designer, but by then the train had already left the station. "Throughout history, the most powerful religious figures have always had distinctive clothing, so why shouldn't you?" Mendoza argued. "You need to look elevated and otherworldly, because, in a way, you are. You are unique among human beings now, Grison. You need to dress the part. This is all a little theatrical, don't you think? Grison commented. But theater is the hallmark of ritual, and ritual is the touchstone of religion, Mendoza responded. Grison thought the scapular that hung over his purple tunic, with all its embroidered webs, was a bit too much. But no one was laughing, and when he first began giving formal audiences to people, he was shocked by how awestruck they were. The supplicants fell to their knees, speechless before him. They trembled just to be in his presence. It turned out that Mendoza was right, looking the part solid, and people bought it just as thoroughly as they bought blue polar bears. And so, with his legend growing, Grison Tolliver spent his days as his sonority, the toll, consoling desperate, starstruck people, and passing along wise advice from the Thunderhead. Except, of course, when he made it up. You lied to him, the Thunderhead said to Grison after his audience with the artist. I never suggested that he paint in unsanctioned places, or that he would find fulfillment in doing so. Grison shrugged. You never said he wouldn't. The information I gave you about his life was to prove your authenticity, but lying to him undermines that. I wasn't lying, I was giving him advice. Yet you didn't wait for my input. Why? Grison leaned back in his chair. You know me better than anyone. In fact, you know everyone better than anyone, and you can figure out why I did it. I can, the Thunderhead said a bit pedantically, but you may want to clarify it for yourself. Grison laughed. Okay, then. The greats see themselves as my handlers. You see me as your mouthpiece in the world. I see you as much more than that, Grison. Do you? Because if you did, you'd allow me to have an opinion. You'd allow me to contribute. And the advice I gave today was my way of contributing. I see. Have I clarified that for myself sufficiently? Indeed, you have. And was my suggestion to him a good one? The Thunderhead paused. I will concede that giving him freedom and artistic license outside of structured boundaries may help him find fulfillment. So, yes, your suggestion was a good one. So, there you go. Maybe you'll start allowing me to contribute a little bit more. Grison, said the Thunderhead. He sighed, certain that the Thunderhead was going to give him some sort of patient, long-suffering lecture for them to have opinions. But instead, what the Thunderhead said surprised him. I know this hasn't been easy. I marvel at how you've grown into this position you've been thrust into. I marvel at how you've grown, period. Choosing you could not have been a more correct choice. Grison found himself moved. Thank you, Thunderhead. I'm not sure you realize the significance of what you've accomplished, Grison. You have taken a cult that despised technology and have caused them to embrace it, to embrace me. The Tonys never hated you, Grison pointed out. They hate scythes. They were on the fence about you, but now you fit within their dogma, the tone, the toll, and the thunder. Yes, the Tonys do so love alliteration. Be careful, Grison warned, or they'll start building temples to you and cutting out hearts in your name. Grison almost laughed, imagining it. How frustrating it would be to make human sacrifices, only to have your sacrifices returned the next day with brand new hearts. There is power to their beliefs, the Thunderhead said. Yes, those beliefs could be dangerous if not properly directed and shaped, and so we will shape them. We shall mold the Tonys into a force that can benefit humanity. Are you sure that can be done? Grison asked. I can say with 72.4 certainty that we can wheel the Tonys toward the positive end. And what about the rest? There is a 19% chance that the Tonists will do nothing of any value, the Thunderhead told him, and an 8.6% chance that they will damage the world in an unpredictable way. The Toll's next audience was not a pleasant one. At first there were just a few extremist zealots coming to him for an audience, but now it seemed to be a daily occurrence. They found ways of twisting Tony's teachings, as well as misinterpreting every little thing Grayson said or did. The Toll rising early did not mean people should be punished for sleeping late. His eating eggs did not imply a fertility rite was called for. And a day of quiet brooding did not mean a permanent vow of silence was required. Tonists wanted so desperately to believe in something that the things they chose to believe were sometimes absurd, other times naive, and when it came to zealots, downright terrifying. Today's extreme believer was emaciated, as if he had been on a hunger strike, and had a crazed look in his eyes. He spoke about ridding the world of almonds, and all because Grayson once mentioned in passing that he didn't care for them. Apparently the wrong ears heard and spread the word. It turns out that wasn't the only scheme the man had. "We must strike terror into the cold hearts of Scythes, so they submit to you," the seal said. "With your blessing, I will burn them one by one, just as the rebel, Sidle the Fair lead." "No, absolutely not." The last thing Grayson wanted to do was antagonize his Scythes. As long as he didn't get in their way, they didn't bother him, and it needed to stay that way. Grayson rose from his chair and stared the man down. "There won't be any killing in my name." "But there must be. The tone sings to my heart and tells me so." "Get out of here," Grayson demanded. "You don't serve the tone or the thunder, and you definitely don't serve me." The man's shock turned to contrition. He folded as if under some heavy weight. "I'm sorry if I have offended you with your sonority. What can I do to earn your favor?" "Nothing," Grayson said. "Do nothing. That will make me happy." The zealot retreated, bowing as he walked backward. As far as Grayson was concerned, he couldn't leave fast enough. The Thunderhead approved of how he had dealt with the zealot. "There have always been, and will always be, those who exist on the fringe of reason," the Thunderhead told Grayson. "They must be set straight early and often." "If you started speaking to people again, maybe they wouldn't behave so desperately," Grayson dared to suggest. "I realize that," the Thunderhead said. "But a modicum of desperation is not a bad thing if it leads to productive soul-searching." "Yeah, I know. The human race must face the consequences of its collective actions." It was the Thunderhead always told him about its silence. "More than that, Grayson, humankind must be pushed out of the nest if it is ever to grow beyond its current state." "Some birds that get pushed out of the nest just die," Grayson pointed out. "Yes, but for humankind I have engineered a soft landing. It will be painful for a while, but it will build global character." "Painful for them or for you?" "Both," the Thunderhead replied. "But my pain must not prevent me from doing the right thing." And although Grayson trusted the Thunderhead, he kept finding himself coming back to those shots. An 8.6% chance that Tony's would damage the world. Maybe the Thunderhead was okay with those odds, but Grayson found them troubling. After a full day of monotonous audiences, mostly with the both Tonys who wanted simplistic answers about mundane matters, he was carried off by a nondescript speedboat that had been stripped of every uncomfortable amenity to make its extravagance feel suitably austere. It was flanked by two other boats, both of which bore burly Tonys armed with mortal-edge weapons to defend it all should someone try to abduct him or end him while in transit. Grayson thought the precautions ridiculous. If there were any plots out there, the Thunderhead would thwart them, or at the very least warn him. Unless, of course, it wanted them to succeed, as it had the first time he was kidnapped. Still, after that first kidnapping, Mendoza was paranoid about it, so Grayson entertained his fears. The boat rounded the glorious southern tip of Lenape City and bounced its way up the Magicantic River, although many still called it the Hudson, toward his residence. Grayson sat below in the small cabin, along with a nervous Tony's girl whose job it was to see to whatever he might need during the journey. Each day there was someone new. It was considered a high honor to ride with a toll to his residence, a reward bestowed upon the most devout, most righteous of Tonists. Usually Grayson would try to break the ice with conversation, but it always ended up being stilted and awkward. He suspected that Mendoza was making a pathetic attempt at providing intimate companionship for the evening, because all the young Tonists who made the journey were attractive and roughly Grayson's age. If that was Mendoza's aim, it failed, because Grayson never made a single advance, even when he might have felt inclined. It would have been the sort of hypocrisy he could not abide. How could Grayson be their spiritual leader if he took advantage of the position? All sorts of people were throwing themselves at him now, to the point that it was embarrassing, and although he shied away from the ones Mendoza put in his path, he did accept occasional companionship when he felt it wasn't an abuse of his power. His greatest attraction, however, was for women who were too unsavory for their own good. It was a taste he had developed after his brief time with Purity Vivers, a murderous girl who he had come to love. Things had not ended well. She was claimed right before his eyes by Scythe Constantine. Grayson supposed seeking out others like her was his way of mourning for her, but no one he found was anywhere near nasty enough. Historically, religious figures tend to be either oversexed or celibate, said Sister Astrid, a devout honest of the non-fanatical variety, who managed his daily schedule. If you can find your happy place in between, that's the best any holy man could ask for. Astrid was perhaps the only one among those who attended him who he considered a friend, or at least could talk to like one. She was older, in her 30s, not old enough to be his mother, but perhaps an older sister or cousin, and she was never afraid to speak her mind. I believe in the tone, she once told him, but I don't buy that what comes can be avoided garbage. Anything can be avoided if you try hard enough. She had first come to him for an audience on what had to be the coldest day of the year, which was even colder under the arc. She was so miserable. She forgot what she was there to ask, and spent the whole time cursing the weather, and the Thunderhead for not doing more about it. Then she had pointed at the embroidered scapular that the Toll wore over his tunic. Have you ever run that wave pattern through a sequencer to see what it spits out? She asked. Turned out his scapular was 7 seconds of mortal age piece of music called Bridge Over Troubled Water, which made perfect sense, considering where the Toll had his audiences. He immediately invited Astrid to be part of his inner circle, a reality check against all the crap he had to face on a daily basis. There were many days Grayson wished he was still laying low, unseen and unknown in his dark little room of the witch at the monastery, an non-entity who had even had his name taken from him. But there was no turning back from this path now. The Thunderhead could read all of Grayson's physiology. It knew when his heart rate was elevated, it knew when he was feeling stress or anxiety or joy, and when he slept, it knew when he was dreaming. It could not access his dreams, though. Even though everyone's waking memories were uploaded to the backbrain on a minute-by-minute basis, dreams were not included. It was discovered early on that when someone needed their brain restored, either a splutter or someone who had suffered brain injury in some other way, dreams became a problem. For when their memories were returned to them, they had trouble differentiating what was real from what was the product of dreams. So now, when one's mind was handed back to them in revival centers, they had every memory, except for the memories of dreams. No one complained, for how could you miss something that you no longer remembered you had? And so, the Thunderhead had no idea what adventures and dramas Grayson experienced in his sleep, unless he chose to confide them once he awoke. But Grayson was not one to talk much about his dreams, and it would have been too forward of the Thunderhead to ask. It did enjoy watching Grison sleep, though, and imagining what strange things he might be experiencing in that deep place that lacked logic and coherence, where humans struggled to find glorious shapes in eternal clouds. Even while the Thunderhead was taking care of a million different tasks around the world, it still isolated enough of its consciousness to watch Grison sleep, to feel the vibrations of his stirring, to hear his gentle breathing and sense how each breath, ever so slightly, increased the humidity in the room. It gave the Thunderhead peace. It gave it comfort. It was glad Grison never ordered the Thunderhead to turn off its cameras in his private suite. He had every right to request privacy, and if asked, the Thunderhead would have to oblige. Of course, Grison knew he was being watched. It was common knowledge that the Thunderhead was, at all times, conscious of everything its sensors were experiencing, including its cameras. But that it devoted such a large portion of its attention to the sensory devices in Grison's quarters was a fact it did not flaunt, for if the Thunderhead brought it to Grison's attention, he might tell it to stop. Over the years, the Thunderhead had witnessed millions of people in each other's arms, embracing as they slept. The Thunderhead had no arms to embrace. Even so, it could feel the beat of Grison's heart on the precise temperature of his body as if it were right beside him. To lose that would be a cause of immeasurable sorrow. And so, night after night, the Thunderhead silently monitored Grison in every way it could. Because monitoring was the closest it could come to embracing.
As Highblade of Mid-America and Overblade of the North American continent, I would personally like to thank the Musonian Scythedom for retrieving the lost Scythe gems and dividing them among the regions of the world, while the 4 other North American regions under my jurisdiction have expressed an interest in receiving their share of the diamonds. Mid-America declines. Instead, I would ask that the Mid-American diamonds be shared by those regions who feel unfairly slighted by Amazonia's unilateral decision to completely ignore regional size when apportioning shares of the diamonds. May the Mid-American diamonds be my gift to the world, with the hope that they will be graciously received in the spirit of generosity with which they were given.
His Excellency Robert Goddard, Overblade of North America, August 5th, Year of the Cobra.